Hello and welcome to Lane 9. My name is Ben Weisel, and joining me today we have a very special guest from the University of Florida, Amelia Mazza-Downie. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Glad that you could join us. Really excited to talk to you. I mean, obviously, you just completed a transfer from New Mexico to Florida. Florida is a very exciting program this coming year with all the new fresh faces. But I wanted to kind of start at maybe the beginning when you were starting to look to the U.S. and look at the NCAA system. What was it that kind of made you want to come to the U.S. And then, secondly, what was it that brought you to New Mexico in specific?
So I was 19 when I was looking for school. So this was a while ago now, I think 4.5 years ago. Um, and I had just like come back from the World Junior Championships, I think, and
Hmm.
I sat down with my coach at the time who is coaching Melbourne Track Club, and we were looking for like a smooth transition from being like a junior athlete to a senior athlete and like how to fill in the gap while like
Sure.
I'm not making senior teams yet, and like college was the best place for that where I could still be really competitive and still be up against really good people, and like it's productive as well. It's not just being kind of in no man's land as a 20-year-old like in Australia. So it was like the best decision for me at the time, to fill in the gap. And I obviously spoke to a few schools, but the reason why I picked New Mexico was just because of their depth with like distance running. And obviously, Coach Joe Franklin knows what he's doing with like specifically 5 and 10K events.
Hmm.
And it just seemed like the right fit at the time. I obviously didn't know what I was getting into. I was like so young, and I just was like, yeah, sure, I'll just go to the States, and it'll be a good time. But yeah, it worked out really well, and I got really lucky with that. I don't think I put in as much thought as people usually do. Like, I know that like people will go on visits and be really
Hmm.
thorough with it, but I was like, just get me over there. But it worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're a multi-time All-American. You were 22nd at NCAA's this past fall, 15-18 PR in the 5K, 32-07 in the 10K. So absolutely think it has worked out great. What was it like coming into the NCAA and then having COVID kind of hit like right through the middle of your first year? What was that kind of like having to navigate that as soon as you just came over to the US?
Yeah, it was obviously really difficult, but I remember for me at the time, I was kind of like, oh, cool, there's a pandemic because I was actually injured, and it was like the only time I've had like an injury that was like lingering. So for me, it was kind of like I was buying time because
Hmm.
because I hadn't competed yet, and then COVID hit. So um, I don't know. I kind of just like took it as it came. That whole period was like basically rehab for me, and it kind of came at the perfect time because I was basically I had this knee issue the whole time COVID was around. And then as soon as we were allowed to race cross again, it like went away miraculously, and I jumped back in. So it was kind of perfect for me. I don't know how that worked out so well, but it like still at the time I went home, and obviously like no one knew what was going on, but yeah, I
Hmm.
just kind of used it as buying time and getting through it. But yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. I actually had a very similar experience. I was injured during that time period, and I was like, all right, well, this gets me extra
Yeah.
season of eligibility. I don't have to rush back. Yeah, so obviously a terrible thing, but I think it sounds like you were able to make the best of it. So once you were in the NCAA, was there a moment we try to ask this to everyone? Was there a moment when you got here and was like, wow, this is a very high level of racing? We like to call it. Was there a welcome to the NCAA moment for you?
I think I had a few of those, but like I just remember watching Wayne train like when I first came in, and
Hmm.
Edna, and I was just like, oh my god, I'm like so far off them, and I was like, I just remember thinking, how am I ever going to get there? But it's also funny because now I broke Wayne's 10K record, and it's like in hindsight, I was just
Hmm.
so young. But I also remember doing my first cross season, which is so brutal. Like cross country is so tough in the NCAA,
Hmm.
and like I just had like bad race after bad race because like there's just so much depth, and especially as an international person, you don't expect the depth to be that like deep.
Mhm.
And I guess like, yeah, everyone thinks it's easier than it is when before you come here. Like that's the mindset you have because you know you're good in your home country, so you think you're still good, and then you kind of get a slap in the face when you get here. It's a good reality check, though. It is hard.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And hey, those two were beating pretty much everybody at that point. So I think
Yeah.
that those were two very high standards to hit. And like you said, you have risen to those standards as well. Was there like on the other side? Was there a moment where you realized, hey, I can kind of compete with anybody in the country? Was there a race or maybe a practice or workout where you realized, hey, I'm at a different level and I can really compete with everyone?
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago. I think I would have been a sophomore, I think. It was two nationals ago. It was that season, and I
Mhm.
raced a 5K. It was, I want to say it was a Zusa, and it was like against like the likes of Ellie Hennes and Ella Donahue and like all of the top names back then. But I raced and I ran like low 15:30 or something, and I was like fifth, and that just clicked.
Mhm.
And then that's when I was like, oh, like I am there, and it is like doable because I was like surrounded by those girls and I wasn't too far off. And that was like the one that clicked for me, I think. And I haven't really looked back since then.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, obviously, that's always one of the better meets, and those names you just mentioned were certainly one of the top, some of the top names at the time. So yeah, I think just getting that confidence obviously is huge. And you mentioned that when you got here, that how hard cross country was initially, but I think one of the things that impresses me the most about you is how consistent you've been throughout your career, and especially at NCAA's in cross country. You really have never had a bad race. You've always been in the top 60. You were All American last year, obviously. What do you think like helps you be so consistent and really not have that many off days compared to the rest of the country?
Mm. I think like I know that it comes from consistent training, like that's the main
Mhm.
thing, and not really putting too much like emphasis and pressure on races, and also
Mhm.
not putting too much emphasis on training sessions as well. Like I think just going in every day and getting the work done, and it kind of translates into the races too, because it's just go in and get the job done type of mentality. Um, but yeah, other than that, I don't really know. I just I just go balls to the walls and hope it works out. I couldn't tell you. But yeah, mostly consistency.
Yeah, I mean, it's worked out super well, obviously. Whatever your mentality is and or whatever your preparation, it's been very, very strong. So this past outdoor season, we saw you run that new 10K PR, and then you followed that up with a fourth place finish at NCAA's. Is this kind of your favorite event, the 10K, or do you prefer some of the shorter distances?
Um, that's a good question. I feel like every time I do better in one event, I'll be like, oh, this one's my favorite now. And I'll go back and forth depending on like how well I run. So I like them equally as much. Like they're both so different. Everyone thinks that they're like the same thing because they're just both so far, but they really are like such a different race. Like the 5K is such a there's more of a speed element to it, obviously, and the 10K
Mhm.
is just a hard grind. But I really enjoy both, and I think I am like naturally better at the 10, but I look forward to like hopefully improving my speed for the 5K in the future in the next outdoor season and indoors, obviously.
Absolutely. Going into that 10K at nationals, did you view yourself as a title contender? Like I mean, we certainly did. Was that kind of your strategy coming into it to figure out the best way to win the race, or were you just looking to kind of read and react?
I think at the time I was thinking I definitely have a shot for top three, and I did
Hmm.
everything that I could have to come top three. I mean, I was fourth, so I was one off it, but
Right.
I also I think going into it, I also had like my doubts about like my kick, my finish, which is like probably my weakest spot. And I guess I like yeah, that was something that needed to be improved on. And I don't know, it was a tough field, and like the top 5 girls were all within like a winning spot. Like any of us could have won it on the
Hmm.
day. Um, and so I don't know, we all did our best, and like I did my best. But yeah, I definitely did think top 3 or a win was like within reach. But I thought that about the top 7 of us also. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we felt too. I think that was one of the harder races for us to predict because I thought there was so many women who could win. Who did you feel like was the biggest threat, or was there like 6 or 7 names that you were like, just kind of hang with this group right here?
Um, I think the biggest in my wait, who was the girl that won? I'm having a mental blank.
Is it Evelyn Kemboy?
Evelyn, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Love Evelyn. But yeah, she in my mind, I know she has a nasty kick. Like she did it at
Hmm.
regionals in the 5 and 10. And then the back of my head, I was like, if anyone's gonna like rip it, it's gonna be her. But yeah, and she did.
Yeah, she had an incredible meet. It was, yeah, that kick, and we saw that a few different times throughout the year. Yeah, it was very impressive. And then she was initially, I think, entered in the 15, the 5K, and the 10K. We were trying to figure that out at regionals too. So yeah, certainly
Yeah.
someone who is fascinating to watch. Um, what was so kind of switching gears? What was the reaction of the team when you all were told that Coach Franklin was going to be headed to Louisville?
Well, obviously everyone like was pretty upset because no one expects it when there's like a coach leaving.
Right.
It happens to a lot of teams, and yeah, but I guess there was people that were obviously upset. Like, but for me personally, I know it's a part of like college, and
Hmm.
um, it just happens and things change. And I think for me and like for some others, we took it as like a new opportunity. It was like it was a new way to look at things and go in a different direction. That's what I took from it. Just to get a different experience and get something else out of myself in a different path. Um, but yeah, it wasn't expected. I didn't know about it. All of us didn't know about it, but it just meant that we can all start a new beginning. And a lot of us were going into grad school anyway, so
Hmm.
and a lot of NCAA athletes usually transfer after their 4 years at a school. I personally would find it impossible to do 6 years at one school. So when people transfer after their 4 years, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense because you really just get sick of being in one place.
As someone who did do 6 years in one place,
Me too.
I understand that, though. I It is a long time. I think it was, like, my 5th year where I was like, "Oh, man, am I
Yeah.
really doing this for 6 years?" But I enjoyed it. I get the wanting to try something new. That
Yeah.
said, though, you obviously had a super talented team, like one that we kind of looked into this upcoming year and was like, we seriously think that you guys can win an NCAA title. Was there a thought ever for you all to kind of stay together for one more year and chase that title? And was that really discussed among you all?
That's so funny. I see. For me personally, I like took myself out of the equation straight away because I was like, I need to go somewhere else. So I don't
Okay.
know what the talks were between the other girls. I think at the end of the day, like everyone was like, let's do what we need to do for ourselves and our own
Hmm.
individual careers. Like I understand that there was a lot of talk about how we should have stayed together, but there was also like a bunch of us that had been there for 4 years already, and
Hmm.
uh, we were kind of like a bit done with Albuquerque. And um, but yeah, no, I don't think that anyone was going to stay just for that. We also weren't sure about who the new coach was coming in.
Right.
Um, and we weren't sure how that would look, and like it's a completely different setup now. It's not like um, like I've heard rumors of what the training is, and we just had a different lifestyle at New Mexico. Like we were very individualized, but also like we were able to like sleep in and run whenever we wanted, and we had a lot of control over our own like day-to-day schedule, and we knew
Mhm.
that wasn't going to fly with whoever else was coming in, so that was a big part of it too.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. So obviously, your old teammate Elise Thorner joined you in Florida. Did you and her really talk about maybe landing in the same spot? Was that a discussion with any of your other teammates about, hey, let's try to stick together and land in the same new school?
So yeah, I definitely let everyone know. Like I was giving them updates on where I was looking, but I also remember saying, like don't make any decisions based off of me. Like,
Hmm.
which is funny because I know that people are like, why didn't they stay for a team title? But I really was like, this is your career and this is your running life. Like, just follow your heart there. And Elise and I were looking at the exact same places and like having the exact same conversations with coaches. We just aligned in when we were in the transfer portal. So um, I think once I had committed, she was like, okay, I'm committing now. Like, I think I was like, yeah, I definitely led her this way, but like kind of by accident. But of course, I'm so happy she came as well. Like, she was a game changer for Florida. But also behind that, she had to go where her twin brother was going. So, because
Oh wow,
he's a
that's a
decathlete.
really extra layer right there.
Yeah.
So
So
so he ended up coming to Florida too.
yeah, she said like I can only go wherever my twin brother gets a full ride. So they had to look at the same places and yeah, there was like a little bit of another layer there.
Wow.
I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, Florida has heaps of money. Just speak to Florida. They've got decathletes. I don't
Oh wow, that's incredible. So you mentioned being on the transfer portal. What were the things you were looking for in schools when you were on the portal, and maybe what were your priorities?
know." Yeah, I think obviously I was looking at coaches like
Mhm.
for the main that was my main bit because I've only got 1 year and I really needed to see who would get the best out of me in such a short period of time. So I really looked at who I was connecting with the most in my in my transfer conversations. Another thing was the weather because New Mexico is so sunny every day. I was like, I
Mhm.
need to be in the sun. And the third, I think I put the team aspect in for cross country third because I've been on a team where cross country has been the priority, but I was also kind of excited to look at where like track would be a priority for teams. And obviously Florida ticks that box, and they also had just brought in the Palmers, which I
Mhm.
had really positive conversations with. And yeah, they just kind of beat everyone else just because of how well we connected and how thorough they were with recruiting. And they, yeah, some schools are just really good at recruiting, and they're really good at what they do and coaching,
Yeah, I
obviously.
mean, we mentioned this that there was a lot of these new coaches that have gone to the big programs, and Coach Palmer being one of them. And we had talked about maybe some of the other ones being thinking that they would recruit really well, and we kind of left Coach Palmer off that list, but he was proven to be one of the best when it comes to not only freshman recruiting, but from the transfer perspective. I mean, bringing
Yeah.
in you and Elise and Flamina Ascol, like, I mean, he's completely revamped this team from a cross country perspective,
Mm,
and it's super interesting to see that. I mean, the Florida is just in a completely different picture now with you
yeah.
all. So yeah, I mean that's funny that you bring that up. Um, Oh, so a lot of your teammates ended up at NAU. Was that something that you were considering, or like again, where is that kind of collectively talked about?
Yeah, I did think about NAU just because obviously Mike Smith is a genius
Mhm.
and he's really good at what he does. And I knew that if I went there, like I definitely thought I could have improved there, but it was more so that it was like so close to Albuquerque and like similar setup with like the altitude and
Right.
um I don't think like personally I don't think I respond amazingly to altitude. I know some people like
Mhm.
are super responders, but I think I would be tired a lot of the time and I had a hard time just like recovering in general and I would always like need to sleep. And I've had like my 15, 18 indoors was coming off of training at home in Melbourne at sea level. And I remembered that
Mhm.
and how fresh I was and how like I know that I'm okay just yeah, not being at such a high intense environment. I'm okay to like be a bit more chilled out and have yeah, like have more of like a balance in my life. And I know that Flagstaff is just like all about running and yeah, I also need to be a bit chilled.
Completely understand. It's nice to have some separation between the sport that you're doing all the time, and yeah, 7,000 feet obviously is no joke. How have you
Mm.
acclimated to the Florida humidity so far. How is that compared
Yeah.
to the altitude?
See, it's no easier actually. It is really hard. But the thing is, I do like it more. I feel like you either have altitude or you have heat, and like both get you really fit. So I actually like the heat aspect. I think that
Mhm.
it's hot, you sweat a lot, you feel like you're working really hard, and you feel really fit after working out. Like I actually enjoy it. I think I enjoy the heat more than the altitude because I still feel like I'm getting something out of it.
Oh yeah, I grew up in Tennessee, and yeah, we always felt like you're getting something out of every run, whether it was a nice easy run, and especially in the summer. So I get that. You had mentioned earlier about you had been a part of cross country teams where the focus was really on that cross country title, obviously at New Mexico, and wanting to also go to a school where maybe track was a little bit of the focus as well. Is there an extra layer of kind of pressure, especially in cross country, where you have these big team goals, and you're obviously at New Mexico always seen as one of those title favorites? Does that kind of bring an extra layer of pressure that makes it not quite as enjoyable as maybe if you were just kind of running on your own?
See, I personally think like it was like I liked it. It was a lot of fun. We always bonded over the fact that we were like title contenders and it brought
Mhm.
us closer together. Um, but I also think that because every season we knew it was the same, it was like, oh, we could win and we could win and it was the same. But I think that when you're so focused on winning, you can sort of like lose, like, you kind of don't know how to surrender to it because you're
Right.
so focused on it. And so coming here already, like we know how good this team is. Like we know our potential, but it's not like the pressure is taken off because Palmer always says just to surrender and like ease into it, just be present. We do meditations in the morning. This is crazy. We have training at 6:15 a.m. and we're meditating before. But it's like just surrender and be present, and like it makes it so much more enjoyable and like attainable when you're just relaxing towards it. So yeah, just same goal, different team, different vibe, but same thing almost.
Yeah, you got to do those early morning runs in Florida,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So you mentioned like obviously you have a great team there. Was it a factor for you that obviously Parker Valby was there, but Flamina Askal also decided to transfer? Did that help you kind of decide or maybe push Florida over the edge for you in terms of this is the quality of women that you can train with, but also compete with in cross country?
Yeah, definitely seeing Flow transfer first was at the back of my mind. Knowing that Parker was here was at the back of my mind. Both are incredibly good runners.
Mhm.
I also remember lining up next to Parker at Outdoor Nationals at the 5K and just looking over at her. And for some reason, like it was like a little sign that I was going to end up here because I just remember seeing her so tall next to me and in front of me. But yeah, she was in front of me the whole race, and I just remember reflecting afterwards and being like, sometimes to be with the best, like you have to train with the best. And that was a mentality that I had with picking schools. So she definitely played a big part in it. And yeah, I'm glad that I came here and I get to run with her, and she's a good character to have around.
Absolutely. So you mentioned obviously the humidity, but how has been this first month or so in Gainesville been? I mean, obviously it's quite a change for you after spending 4 years in Albuquerque. But what has it been like being in Gainesville, being with this Florida program?
Well, it's so different. Obviously, this is a big SEC football school, like already a completely different setup, like incredible resources. A lot of things that I didn't have in New Mexico are at my fingertips here, which have actually helped a lot. Like it's helped my day to day knowing that I have access to a dining hall 3 times a day, and just like all the people and the staff that are here, just very different schools, but like yeah, it's been an easy transition, and like I am older now, so I was able to navigate it all quite quickly and kind of stay grounded through it. But yeah, I slid straight into the team, started training, made friends with the girls, and just having fun. And it's the sun's always out, so everyone's smiling, and it's just a really good vibe. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. How have you all been able to kind of bond as obviously a lot of new faces coming in? How have you all been able to kind of build that camaraderie so quickly?
Well, the Palmers have done a really good job of getting us all together. Um, we've done like goal setting together. We'll have team dinners, obviously. We have recruiting dinners. We see each other in the dining hall 3 times a day. I don't know if I love or hate seeing everyone that often, but no, it's good. Like we're always around each other. Um, and yeah, the Palmers have done a good job of creating a really strong team environment, and the goal setting was really good for that. And then having the usual team meetings, and yeah, it's been really good. Like we're all very familiar with each other and we're around each other a lot, which is funny, but it's also really good.
Absolutely. There's nothing like that like time period before school starts when you're just with the team all the time. Like you said, eating, running,
Yeah,
literally everything.
yeah.
You become fast friends. So you mentioned your goal setting. What are some of the goals for the team and maybe you individually as well this year?
I think for the team, we obviously think that we could be title contenders, top three. Like
Mhm.
I guess we all want to do our very best on the day. I know that personally, I want to do better than I did last year. I was 22nd last year. I would love a top 10 finish. I think that's what I'm completely capable of, and something that I'll work towards. And I just know that we said within the team that as long as like we all do better than last year, we could do really well. And that was for all of us, our top four girls individually. So that would be really crazy if we can tick those boxes. Then collectively, it should come together on the day.
Yeah, I mean, you all have the potential of having the best top four in the country. Certainly, I think we have you in our top 10 in our rankings, so we certainly believe that top
Oh,
10 is
thanks.
certainly attainable. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think the program in general is just super interesting. We've seen these top heavy lineups do pretty well in the past, and like I said, your consistency I think is huge for a team that has a lot of different moving pieces. So I think those are certainly attainable for you. Maybe individually on the track, what are some things that you're looking to do during your last year?
For the track, obviously we have indoors first, which I would love to qualify for in the 5 and just see how much better I can do. I think my top finish was 7, so
Hmm.
I'd like to be All American again. My favorite is outdoors, and so I would like to put in a really good double, and hopefully be All American in both the 5 and the 10. I like seeing Emily Venters do it last season was a really good. It was really good inspiration for me, and kind of planted a seed in my mind that it's like really manageable. And yeah, I lined up with her like most of the season, and I feel like we're very similar athletes as well. So I was like, if she can do it, I can do it. She's a legend.
Absolutely, and I mean you were right on the edge of that last year. So I wouldn't be surprised if you were able to get those double All American finishes. Um, well, I think that's all the questions I had. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to touch on briefly?
No, I think you covered everything.
Great. Well, again, thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time. We're super interested to see how you and the rest of the team do this fall and the rest of this year. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.